Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully there'll be a few more people trickle in, but we are so glad that those of you that are here with us tonight are here tonight to hear more information and ask questions about our bond proposal. I'm going to walk through a presentation with you that kind of gives a lot of information that will hopefully answer some of the questions that you have. And then at the end, we'll have a time for you to ask questions either about the information within the PowerPoint or anything else that you want to ask about with the bond proposal. So let's start off with this working. There it goes, wrong way. It worked a few minutes ago. Okay. Cooper, it's not moving forward. It'll go back, but it won't go forward. Okay, so while she's coming to fix that, I'll just start. I know the first slide already for as many times as we've presented. So the first slide just talks about how we got to this point. So we started back in the fall, early fall, when we started talking about what the district was facing, what questions we had, the new growth that was coming, and what the district could do to deal with that new growth. And so we put together a committee, and I shouldn't say put together, we created a committee based on volunteers. So we sent emails out, flyers out, we asked for volunteers across the community. The district did not appoint anyone to that committee, it was strictly voluntary. We ended up with 64 members of the community that were part of that committee that started talking about what were the priorities of the district, what were the needs of the district, and how did we need to move forward as a district. That group listed the priorities out. We talked about costs, we talked about implementation, and then in January, that committee made a recommendation to the school board to call a bond election in May. In February, the school board voted to call a May 7th bond election in the amount of $650 million. The rallying cry that we have talked about ever since we started that first committee and throughout that committee, and as we're continuing to talk about, is that in our district we will have at least 7,500 new homes in our district in the next 5 years. We will also be over capacity at all of our campuses by 23-24. You're going to see some information tonight that's actually going to skew that a little bit because it's actually going to be happening before we get to 23-24. And then at least 6,000 total students in the next 5 years. We're looking at 10,000 students in the next 10 years. We're already ahead of that projection, so we expect to hit that 10,000 before the 10 years gets here. This is what the bond scope looks like. Had a lot of people ask me about the bond itself. What are we getting for $650 million? So there is different pieces of this bond project that are listed here. This is actually 3 propositions within the bond, so it's not just a one vote. It's a vote on 3 separate propositions. Proposition A is the largest of the 3 propositions. It does include 4 elementary schools, 2 on the west side of the district, 2 on the east side of the district, 2 additional middle schools, 1 on the west side, 1 on the east side, and then doubling the capacity at our high school. We just added on 8 classrooms at the high school, and that got us up to a capacity of 1,000 students. We are projected to open the doors next year at about 1,048 students, so over that capacity. This proposal would get us to a point where we had a capacity of 2,100 high school students. In that would be lots of expansion on this campus to be able to house 2,100 students. Also in this is renovations for McClendon and Neesmith. Those will be a mixture of things, aesthetics, carpet, paint, fixtures, those kind of things, but also some possible structure things that would take place at those two campuses, and then a new ag facility, new support facilities. This year we ran 18 bus routes. Next year we are going to have to run 24 bus routes. The following year we're predicted to run 30 bus routes. We're predicting that we'll be running 50 bus routes in the next 2 to 3 years. With that many buses, we have to have places to park them, work on them, fuel them. We have to have bays to wash them and prepare them for kids. So there is a plan in this proposition for a new transportation facility. Also in this proposition is maintenance and warehousing and a new administration building. I'll explain more about the administration building when we get a little bit further into this presentation. And then there's also land and a project manager. The land, of course, is obvious. We have to have places to put these facilities if we're going to build them, and so land is part of this proposition. And then the project manager is the only personnel position that you can pay for with bond funds. And so this person would be the person who oversaw all of the projects that were going on and made sure that we as a district were getting the very best value for all of our money. We currently pay a third-party representative who kind of acts in that capacity for the district and works between the district and the construction manager, the architects, and all of that, and kind of helps the district go down that path. He does a great job of doing that. However, he also contracts with other districts and with other companies. And the desire of the district with this many projects going on is that we need one person that is dedicated just to CISD, who their daily work is overseeing these projects and making sure that district funds are spent appropriately and we're getting the very best value for our dollar. In Proposition B, it's a $19 million proposition. That is for stadium upgrades. Been questioned a lot about this price that's listed here. If you compare this price to most of the stadiums that are built in this area, the DFW area, this seems really low for a stadium. The reason that is as low as it is because we would not build a new track and would not build a new field. We would turf our current field. That turf is 10 years old now, and so we would do new turf there, leave the track, leave the field in place where it is, and most of that money would be spent on expanding the bleacher capacity, adding restrooms, concession stand, press box, and getting us up to where we don't have to limit the number of people who can come to events in that stadium. And then Proposition C is $35 million. That is for a multi-purpose indoor facility. That's a full-length field, locker rooms, and classrooms. Classrooms would be utilized by the high school campus. Locker rooms, of course, by our athletics. And then our field would be used by multiple people, not just athletics. It would be a district operated facility so that our band could march if there was inclement weather or needed a conditioned space in the heat of the summer, dance team, cheerleaders, drill, but also our youth sports would have additional spaces to use. And if our elementaries were having a field day and there was bad weather, we could bus the kids over and they could actually still have their field day inside that facility. So it would be used district-wide for multiple events and special groups. When this goes on a ballot, we actually have, no, we don't have there. We have a copy of the ballot, but let me just say this first here. When you see the ballot in a few minutes, you're going to see there's a lot of confusion about how this looks when we get there. You're actually going to vote yes or no on A, yes or no on B, and yes or no on C. So it's not an all-encompassing, and it's not an either-or. You'll get a choice on each of the propositions. And so why are there 3 propositions? Been asked this a lot. Why did you split it out? Why didn't you just go out for the 650 with all of that? There was actually a rule that was a law that was passed on how you could do school bonds. It said if you had an athletic facility that had a capacity of 1,000 or more, you had to pull it out separately from your educational spaces. So we pulled out those two places that would be used for other things and left our largest one with all of those education and operational spaces in there. Real briefly, just to give you some information about M&O and INS, that's school funding. It's a real general overview of the way that we are funded by tax and state money, and also how we spend money in the district. So you can kind of think of it of having two buckets of money. When the taxes are come in, they either go into the M&O bucket or the INS bucket, and when they go out, they come from those buckets as well. The M&O side is our maintenance and operations. That's our salaries that we pay people. That's the electricity, these chairs, papers, pencils, anything we use to run the school district. The INS side is the debt, so that's only what we're paying towards those bond payments that we already have for the district, and that's all that can be used for. And so when you have a tax rate, the tax rate is broken up into two areas. You have your M&O side, your M&O tax rate, and your INS tax rate that are combined together to get your full school tax rate. It's going to be important when I show you in a few minutes a couple of things that are going to happen through this process, that you understand what is in each of those buckets of money and how they are spent for the district. A lot of people ask me who decides what those tax rates are. So on the M&O side, TEA actually sets that tax rate. Used to be a lot more flexibility within the school districts for the school boards to have some flexibility and input into what those tax rates were going to be. The TEA, the Texas Education Agency, has now the last 3 years compressed what tax rates districts can use on their M&O side. So they've told districts this is what your M&O tax rate will be for your district. On the INS side, it can only be that rate that will generate enough money to pay your bond payments. It is also capped at 50 cents. So in 2017, Community ISD went out for a bond, and at that time they went from a 45-cent INS rate to a 50-cent INS rate. That is the highest that it can be, that we're capped there by the state, cannot go above 50 cents. So we are not able, even if we wanted to raise that INS tax rate. This just shows you a little bit about how the tax rate, the school tax rate, has changed over the last few years for Community ISD. I like this chart a little bit better. It kind of explains it to me a little bit more in detail. You'll see that the M&O tax rate started at $1.17 with a 45-cent INS rate, which made the total tax rate $1.62 in 17-18. And then in 18-19, that's where that changed when that bond was passed, and they moved from a 45-cent INS rate to a 50-cent INS rate, stayed at the $1.17 M&O. And then you can see where the state came in and started making the district compress their M&O rate, and then how the 50 cents as capped has been the same on the INS side. We have 96 cents listed there for an M&O rate for this coming year. However, we have been told by TEA that will more than likely be compressed again. So this is probably the most that it would be. We expect that 96 to be compressed a little bit more this coming year, but the 50 cents would remain the same whether the bond passes or doesn't pass. The INS rate will be 50 cents, which would give a $1.46 tax rate, the same as it was this year, if not lower. This shows you our pupil projections for the next few years. That yellow bar is a projection for this year, for what we would have for the entirety of this year. In the fall, when we used this slide and started preparing for this whole conversation, that number was 3335. That was what our demographers were projecting for this year. When we got to December, we had passed that number, and so our demographer came back with new numbers for us, did more studies on the home developments that were happening in our district, looking at what we were getting from each of those developments as far as student capacity, and he went up to 3479. As of today, this is the first time I've said this in a presentation because it changed today. As of today, we are at 3,502 students in the district. So we have already surpassed what the projections were for us to end this school year with. We are getting repeatedly new students every day. That number changes. We watch it every day to see what happens. We had one day in January where Neesmith Elementary gained 18 kids in one day. And so we're seeing big influxes in what happens on our campuses. This is projected out for 10 years, but as I said, we've already surpassed what this year's number was, and you can see that 10,000 number up there. Also, the big thing on this chart is the red box over on the side of the chart. Our total student capacity, so the number of spaces that we have for kids in the district, is 4,000. So we have room for 4,000 kids in the current buildings that we have in the district. This is a little more detailed on our projections for next year. So our demographer always studies by class, looking at what the enrollment is and what kids are coming into the district, and does a projection of what we're going to have for the year. I'll call your attention to the totals on the far side. You'll see that McClendon Elementary is predicted to have 659 students. That's a little bit low because that does not include our bilingual students that will be on that campus. That campus will have to add 6 new bilingual teachers because of our bilingual population and the increase that we're seeing there. There are not 6 additional classrooms at McClendon to put those 6 new teachers. And so we are kicking out, and I use that phrase nicely, that we are kicking out the administrators who are currently housing offices in the Ellis Education Center, the old Edge building. We're going to kick them out of their offices and into a portable building so that we can move 5th grade from McClendon up to that space so that we have space for those bilingual students and those 6 new classrooms that we need to add to that campus. Neesmith Elementary, that campus was built for 750 students. That is counting the addition, the 5th grade addition that was added several years ago to that campus. We are predicted to have at least 804 students when we open the door in August. We're going to have to add 8 new teachers to Neesmith Elementary. There are not 8 classrooms at Neesmith that those teachers can go into, so we will be purchasing a portable building for those 8 classrooms to go into. We started that process a few weeks ago when we got these numbers. Since then, we have also found out that those 8 classrooms will not be enough, and so we will have to add a second portable building there before August for either 2 more classrooms or 4 more classrooms. And we're debating back and forth on that. I'll tell you what we're going to wait to see on that is if the bond passes, we're going to get the 2 classroom portable building because there will be relief of elementary number 4 being built, so then we can move some of those kids over to elementary number 4 and we won't have to have additional portables there. If the bond does not pass, then that means we will be going into a portable building project across the district, and we will need those 4 classrooms because we won't have a space to put those additional students that following year. And then we go to Roderick Elementary. Roderick Elementary is our new elementary that's opening in Magnolia Farms over in the Josephine area. That campus was also built, a normal campus for elementary, 750 students. We are predicted to open that campus at 710 students. We should not need a portable building on that campus the first year, So if the bond passes, we should be fine there because elementary number 5 would be started during the year next year and would be completed mid-year in 23-24. And so we would have some relief coming on to help them. If the bond does not pass, we will have to put a portable building at Roderick Elementary the second year that they're open. And then we come to Edge Middle School. Edge Middle School is predicted to have 943 students next year. That campus was just renovated and expanded and should hold 750 to 800 students. There's no room for 943 students, so we are moving the 6th grade from Edge over to the Ellis Education Center. So all 330 6th graders will go over to Edge, to the old Edge, to Ellis. Because we are moving them, we are also going to kick out our technology department, who takes up a large space over at Ellis, and they will be moved into a portable building as well to make room for our kids. Our philosophy is we'd rather put the adults out in the portable buildings than kids out in the portable buildings. So we're going to move adults out and put kids in that space. And then we come to our high school. Our high school has a capacity of 1,000 students. We're predicted to open the doors next year to about 1,048 students. And so we're not going to make any changes at the high school right now. We're hoping with what we use in the CTE building and how students are out there and back into this building at different times of the day, that we'll be able to suffice with that being a little bit over capacity for next year. This is the reason that we're looking at a lot of increase in enrollment for our district. This is a map that shows some of the developments that are in our district. When we first put this map in the presentation, it was pretty accurate about the number of developments here, but that has since increased dramatically. There's a lot of developments that aren't included on this map. Just on our way to this event tonight, we passed a new development that is going in. People were out there starting to work on roads that is not included on this map. I'll call your attention to the green area over on the left side of the screen. That's where Magnolia is. That purple star is where Roderick Elementary is. We do have phases 8, 9, and 10 to still be built out there, and so they are still working on that, so that 710 will continue to increase until that's built out. And then you see that's a D.R. Horton subdivision. Mr. Rick Horton, who lives here in the community, is affiliated with that company. And if you'll see the little square, the yellow square that's just right beside that green area, that's a subdivision called Waverly. It is also a D.R. Horton subdivision. It's what Mr. Horton refers to as his 3-car subdivision. A little bit larger lots, a little bit larger homes, and so there'll be a different amount of kids that will come from that area. And then if you look at the top of the screen, you see the yellow that runs just along the boundary of our school district. That is called Riverfield. That is also a D.R. Horton subdivision. That subdivision is supposed to have 4,500 homes in it. Half of the subdivision will be in Community ISD, and half of it will be in Caddo Mills ISD. Phases 1 through 4 will be in Community, and 5 through 8 will be in Caddo Mills. Mr. Horton has worked with the school district, and we are working on an elementary site inside that subdivision. He has been very receptive to working with the district and helping the district out in that regard. You can see other subdivisions across the area there. There's still lots of other ones that have not been put on this map. I'll call your attention, though, to the one that looks like a puzzle piece on the right side there. And that one is called, the one you guys have probably all seen when you go down 78 and 6. That is called Elevon. That is a development that's supposed to have 4,600 homes in it. The developer there is John Marlin. He's also been very receptive in working with the school district. We are working on a possible elementary site within that subdivision as well. He's been very helpful with that. Both of those sites that we're working with those developers on will not be ready for a 23-24 or 24-25 opening. So if the bond passes, those two areas would be sites for number 6 and number 7 on the elementary schedule. And then we've got other areas that are open in there in the south of Lavon. There's another one that's not on there that we just learned about probably 2 months ago that's going to have 2,000 homes in it. Those kind of places will fill up an elementary almost by themselves once they're built out. And so we are looking at, this says 22, there's more than that now. This says that we currently have 1,377 lots that are actually groundwork. This has been a couple of months since we've done this, and you guys have seen that development and know how fast those things happen, so there's more than that actually being developed at this point. We're working with developers, talking with the developers. We're actually talking with another developer right now, Mr. Boone, who is the Nicholson Ranch developer, and that's in the Lavon area on some possible options for the school district. This is a projection of how many homes we're supposed to have in this area. We're supposed to have at least 1,100 homes this year and then 1,200 homes each year for the next 4 years. And so that will lead to that increase in population for our district. It's a little bit close up of some of those subdivisions, just some more information we have on the number of homes in each one and when they're going to be built out. I can answer questions on what we know about those if you'll have questions. Want to talk about the ballot itself real quick. This is something that we want to make sure that we're being transparent about and that we're telling everybody that's going to vote in this election, is that when you go to the voter booth and you have your ballot, that ballot will have this sentence on there. This is a property tax increase that's required on all school bonds across Texas. It has to say that it is a property tax increase. While we as Community ISD are not raising the tax rate, this is looked at as an extension of debt. So as you're adding additional debt to the school district, that could be seen as a property tax increase. So regardless of whether the rate's going up or not, and regardless of whether your payment's going up or not, we have to have this sentence on the ballot. And so that will be on the ballot when you go into to vote. This is actually, we just received this today, a copy of what the ballot is actually going to be what's going to look like. This is actually a sample of the ballot. So it'll have Proposition A that lists those things that I went over earlier, a for and against, and then Proposition B, for and against, and then Proposition C, for and against. This is Hunt counties. That was Collin County that we just looked at. We do have both counties within our district, and so Hunt County is pretty much the exact same thing, just looks a little bit different in format. So for and against on each of the propositions for our school bond. There's been some question about whether we're going to spend the $650 million or go into that debt immediately, and that's just not how bonds work. So we're not going to go sell bonds in the amount of $650 million right off the bat. We have some experts that are helping guide the district in this regard on what our financial capacity is for selling bonds. We don't want to ever do things that get us into a bind or where we don't have the financial capacity to pay. Our financial advisor is actually in the room tonight, Christian Merritt with Live Oak, and he is our advisor that makes sure that we stay within our realm, stay within what we can financially afford. So we're looking probably at those first bonds would be sold. We're talking, I'm going to say numbers and he's going to cringe, but we're talking about maybe $40 or $50 million for the first bond. Sell those, go out, wait till July when we get certified values. When our certified values come in from the county, it tells us how much taxable value we have out there and how much money we're going to have coming in. Then we would be able to decide how much our next bond sales would be, based on the financial capacity we had from the taxable value. So then in the fall, we would sell more bonds off. to be able to move forward with the projects that we need to move. And then we would wait for the next one until the following April and July when we get certified preliminary and then certified values from our counties to show us what growth did we have, how much additional taxable value did we have, and how much can we afford to sell at that point. So it would be a continual thing until we reach the $650 million in bonds that the voters would decide that we could sell. Will we build everything at once? Of course, I kind of answered that with that question. If we're not selling them all at once, we definitely can't build them all at once. So we would only build what we have the need to build and what we have the financial capacity to build based on the bonds that we're selling. And then what would we do if the growth slows? With the economy the way it is right now, this is a question that a lot of people has. What if the housing market crashes tomorrow? What would the school district do? Well, as I explained, we're going to be looking at that financial capacity. And so if the housing market crashed and the growth stopped, we wouldn't sell the bonds. Number one, we wouldn't need these buildings if we're not going to have additional students coming in. And number two, we wouldn't have the financial capacity to pay the debt. So we would not sell the additional bonds. So we'll only sell what we can afford to pay back with the growth that we have. And then what if the bond doesn't pass? So we do have to have a plan. As any leader would tell you, you don't always just go in and put all of your eggs in one basket. You've got to have a plan for what if this doesn't go a certain way. So we do have a plan for what we're going to do if the bond does not pass. This plan started off being we would place a portable building at Neesmith, and then we'd wait and see where we were. Growth has come a little bit faster than what we have anticipated, and so we're going to have to go ahead and jump out there and get that portable building at Neesmith, actually 2 portable buildings at Neesmith. And that's going to cost us close to $1 million for the one. And a lot of people push back on that a little bit and say we can go down and buy a portable building a lot cheaper than $1 million. What people don't understand is when you place students in portable buildings, you can't just go buy one off the local lot. It has to have architectural input, engineering input. You have to make sure that it meets the codes for a capacity of students. And so after I'm going to quote a price here. After we looked for the one portable building at Neesmith, it's got 8 classrooms in it and 2 restrooms in it. The cost on the building alone is $758,000. That does not include transporting it to us after manufacture. It does not include the prep work for the surface where it will go, the electricity, the plumbing, or the internet networking that would have to be done to that building. So we're looking at spending right at $1 million for that building, for getting that up at Neesmith, and then an additional building would increase that. We'll have 2 buildings here. I told you administrators will be in one, technology will be in another, so that will be additional expenses. One of the things that I want people to understand with this piece is that when you start putting portable buildings on campuses, you cannot pay for portable buildings out of the INS bucket. Remember how I said there's an M&O bucket and the INS bucket. In the INS bucket, you cannot use those funds to pay for portable buildings. So our portable building purchases have to come from our M&O side. 75% of Community ISD's M&O budget is used for salaries. So I know for sure that I'm going to have to pay for at least $1 million over at Neesmith, a little bit more for the second one, and then a couple of them for next year. That's going to have to come out of the M&O side. And then as we move forward, if the bond doesn't pass, our plan is to put a portable building at Roderick. We'll need 2 at the high school, hopefully not the following year, but the year after that. I'll show you some locations here. These are the 2 that are going in. Of course, these have to be we work with the architects on the best location and where we need to put these buildings. That's a 5th grade wing with the white roof on it. 2 buildings, they actually walk these spaces today, and this is our goal, if everything works out, that those 2 buildings would go on both sides of that. This is if McClendon won't need a portable building next year because we're going to move those fifth graders up where the administrators were. But they will need a portable building the following year if the growth comes and the bond does not pass. And so this is the location we are planning on currently for putting that portable building. This is outside Ellis Education Center, and this shows the administration portable building and the technology portable building that will be out there next year. We should be fine without having to put students in a portable building at Ellis for at least a couple of years. Then you've got your Edge middle school portable building that we should be able to wait 2 years to put that portable building in. And then we're hoping to get 2 years before we have to put, there'll actually need to be 2 portable buildings added to the front of the high school. And Roderick Elementary is not up there, but that would be an additional space that we would have to add a portable. That one would be not this coming year, but the following year. Just a reminder that to be able to vote in the election, this bond election, you have to be registered by April 7th. We have some concern about a lot of new people moving into this area and not thinking to register, so we really want people to register. Our goal as a district is not to tell you how to vote, but to get you to the polls to vote. We want everyone to feel informed and educated and able to make their own decision on how they want to vote, but we really want there to be a large turnout to vote in this election. Early voting is April the 25th through May 3rd, and then election day is May 7th. I'm going to do another town hall meeting on April the 20th to provide information and also answer questions. And then we also have an appearance schedule. I'm going around the districts. I've spoken at a lot of the churches, civic events, some local HOA events, some businesses, just where people have asked me to come in and answer questions. And so we have several things still scheduled on the books. If you're interested in that, communityisdbond.com events has a list of everywhere that we will be. So the other thing that I'm doing is that as I've talked to a lot of people all around the district, and we are very spread out with all of our, Nevada, Josephine, Lavon, and Copeville. A lot of people don't understand what's happening in the other parts of the district. So I am hosting a bus tour, and we are going to this is on the 23rd, and we are going to have refreshments, and we're going to travel around the community and show everybody the housing developments. There are some of them that are very obvious, that are on 6 or 78 in this area, but that are also a lot of them that are kind of hidden and I think people don't know about. So we're going to take a tour around the district and look at all of the housing developments within the district. Any questions? Now I'm open to any questions that anybody has in the audience.
Just raise your hand if you have a question. Sorry.
Just wondered how much time you're allowing for that bus tour, because I spent about 3 hours this afternoon trying to do it myself.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, I don't know that we've set a time, have we? We're going to leave at 1 o'clock. On the 23rd, and we haven't really set a time for that. It's a lot. There's a lot of places to go visit. There's a lot of private land, farmer land, that has been sold off in small chunks instead of these big ones like we've seen on the map. And so I've asked all the realtors to give me information on exactly where different homes are. And so we're going to go and try to hit all the ones that I know about, the ones that are really having an impact on what's going on. So I would expect it will take multiple hours for us to make our way around. That's the reason I'm going to try to provide some fun and some refreshments and things like that on those buses. Sure.
I was wondering if the insurance on the portable buildings, does that run differently than on the permanent buildings? If you have to go the route of the portable buildings, does that increase that a lot?
I don't know. I can't answer the difference, but there would be a difference in the type of insurance that is put on a portable building versus a brick and mortar building. I was looking at my CFO. I don't know that you have a number in place. We can get you that information and tell you exactly what the difference would be. But that's a good point. I haven't thought to look into that and see what that difference would be. Other questions?
We have two online.
Okay, and we
The-
are online tonight.
The first question we received online was from Rachel Dumas, who said, with this massive growth, can we eventually expect a second high school to be built?
So that was one of those questions that I really don't think we're prepared to start looking at with what's built into this bond package. If this bond passes, that will change this capacity at this high school to 2,100. I think that if the growth continues past that, it will have to be a decision that's brought up for the district school board with community input to make a decision on how we proceed. Right now, that is not a decision that we're working on. We're working on trying to get capacity for what we do have coming in right now.
And then the second one is not a question, but it's a comment. Kevin says that they moved to Lavon 3 years ago and have watched the growth, and he does not think the projections match up with the growth that he has witnessed. He understands preparing, but disagrees with projections and does not support the bond as written and explained.
Okay, is he saying that there's not that the projections are high or low?
Are too high, that the
They're
growth
too
isn't
high.
matching that. And no other questions or statements.
Okay, and I'll just speak to the projections just real quick. I've only been in the district since August, so I can't speak to things that happened before then. But since I've been in here in August, the projections have we've exceeded them 3 times. When I first got here, we exceeded the ones that had been there before. We had the 33-35 in December. We exceeded that, and then the projections of 34.79 that was up there just recently. We are now at 35.02, so we've exceeded those as well. I think that we are exceeding those projections with real kids walking into the classroom, and so I have to take that, if anything, we're undershooting the numbers that are coming.
He did clarify. He said, for example, with the elementary schools, starting with 2, and if the growth keeps pace as described, and have a new bond election in a year or 2. So I think he's asking why the decision for the full bond and how it works.
Sure. So the committee talked a lot about how to build this out. How much do we put into this? Do we put just a little bit and then come back? And with what we're looking at on the growth, it takes right at a year. We're hoping we can get one built in a year, to 2 years to build an elementary, 2 to 3 years to build a middle school, and 3 to 4 years to build a high school. And so we're talking about what year this was going to hit and when you would have to come back to the table because of growth. We would be back at the table preparing for another bond election next spring and getting ready to do this again. Every time we go out for election, it does cost the district. And so I think it was the mindset of the committee at the time. We do have some committee members in here if they want to speak out, but I think the mindset was that we go and we get in front of some of the growth instead of always trying to catch up to the growth.
And there is one other thing that you previously said in the presentation, that if growth slows, we won't sell all the bonds. So
Correct.
We're not going to all of that
Right.
at once.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Statements?
Bob and I had a real estate business in Plano for 30 years with different companies. And we started about 1983 and retired about 2013, I think. If you have ever been through watching a town grow like that, whether it's Plano or Allen or McKinney, Frisco, just... you need to be prepared.
Thank you.
We
for that
came out
comment.
here to get away from that.
Well, I definitely, growth is coming. They're coming and enrolling every day. Both of our elementary campuses are over capacity today. Our middle school is over capacity, and so we're working to try to get ahead of that growth, whether that's with brick and mortar from the bond or with portable buildings. We will have to have more space starting in August for our kids to have a place to be educated by the district. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you so much for coming. I do have an open door policy. If you have questions or if you want to sit down with me and talk with me about anything with the bond process, the bond package, I would be happy to sit down and talk with you and give you any information that I have. I will follow up just for the whole public on the insurance question, and we'll get that information out on our FAQ page. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. We do have bond signs that are available if you want those. We also have registration cards if you need to register to vote. Our bond signs are very generic. We're not telling you how to vote, yes or no. We just want you to vote. So this is the bond sign, just tells you when the election is and encourages you to come and to voice your opinion. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you, whether you're in person or online. Thank you for participating and supporting CISD.